We bought it as a triple. Or we sold it as three. We sold it as 3 units.
Or you got to put to get it back.
We sold it as 3 units.
You maybe try to drive here?
You guys were here early enough, though, right?
Yeah, we got here at 4 o'clock.
Sorry.
After the
What time do you leave work?
Media and publishing.
What else time?
In the Boston area, or?
Mike, it looks like the technology set up. Are you still,
We're hoping.
Next month.
Any second now.
Well, next month you're invited, 4:30, Barton's Craft Dinner.
for the July meeting?
Yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
it gets you out of traffic.
I didn't have a choice. An hour and 45.
And so now you have Farley sweating, so in our conversation today, it went something like, I will call you over the weekend, Steve, because I don't even know how to set up a PowerPoint. I'll tell you what I want and send you the pictures, you can set it up.
We're good. Is it possible the presenter could sit here because we're going to use the microphone in this? Thank you very
Still
much.
be like 3 or 4.
Yeah, I'll beat them up by then.
Or why don't you write it for him?
I told him I'm not gonna, I told him I'm not giving any input on what you're talking about. Because I don't wanna hear how
My name's
I think you know Greg.
And I know.
I'll send him a text now and say, hey,
Somehow,
we'll borrow.
and Garrett's happy.
I'll take him,
I'm a believer.
You have to be a believer to living.
Started at 10 o'clock.
You're gonna hear that. You're gonna hear that.
I've heard a little bit about the Smith College building.
Oh, yeah.
So Coleman Hall.
Yeah. It's still in a,
So they.
What? Beta phase.
There we go. This is for signing up if you want to get an certificate. So,
Oh, yeah.
continuing education is broadcasting this. So if you could stand somewhere in this area.
Can I slide in?
Absolutely, you can sit here. And if you'd like to use this, that should work.
Let's convene the
Forward
meeting.
and there's reverse.
How's that?
And it's just.
And there's a laser pointer.
Our presenter and our IT guy.
Do I need my eyes?
Yeah.
That's the pointer.
Yeah, the red button. Sure, here.
You know what? Something we haven't done for a while is introductions. Just go around and it's I see that there's some new faces here, but also we need to stall a little bit because traffic's pretty bad out there. So and also we'll give Rick, who hasn't been here for a while, a chance to figure out actually who's in the room and how he should pitch his talk. So you can change slides on the fly.
Yeah,
So Steve, let's start with you. Just give your name, where you're from, and 10 seconds or less on what you do.
Steve Metric. I'm a builder, Southern Rhode Island, certified passive house builder. Built my starting one this summer. And yeah, I come up here to be inspired. Looking forward.
Speak loudly.
Josh and I have my stick.
Steve.
Oh, 10 seconds. Steve Basic, I'm an architect. I do passive homes, deep energy retrofits. I work across the spectrum of energy.
Mike Kiclow, I'm a passive house consultant.
Mark Yancey, passive house consultant, engineer.
Rick Ames, architect with Next Phase Studios, passive house believer.
Tonight's presenter. One of tonight's presenters.
Garrison Gamble, designer for Next Phase Studios.
Tonight's other presenter.
Bob Lucchetti.
Passive house trained.
Bob Lucchetti, I'm an architect and passive house trained, and I've been coming to these things since we got started.
Let's go behind.
Paul Discourse, Southern New Hampshire, passive house certified designer as of last week.
John Unger, just an interested person.
Are you a lay person? Or are you in the?
Well, actually, I just retired from being an elementary school teacher, but in my original career, I studied architecture, left school midway, and worked in the field for about 5 years. But when I was at school, I went to NC State in the 60s. And there was a lot of interest at that time in design with nature, passive, non-technical passive design, looking at indigenous houses from around the world. We had a professor named Henry Sanoff who was very much into that. He was kind of our guru. So I'm just kind of getting back into that.
Yeah. So
He was important. He wrote some significant books on this stuff, I think, early on.
So you went
can
from
see the
architecture
audio
into
level
elementary
here.
school teaching,
Okay.
and now
Just
you're going back into
for
architecture.
say
There's
something.
all sorts of things I can say about that.
Speakers, I mean, the mic is somewhere.
Yeah, it's in the laptop, and I'm listening.
Okay. And I'm flying without my glasses, so I'm not going to be tracking that.
Okay. You tell me. Just give me a poke. I will wander off. I will. Thank you.
Amy,
I'm Amy Tyler, the Executive Director of Passive House in England. If you could sign in on this piece of paper, you could be on our mailing list, and that for CEU credits.
Hi, I'm Neera. I'm a business school student, and I'll be joining Passive House in England as an intern, and probably I'm here just to make a fun, just as a guest.
how many of you are familiar with the Mass CEC internship program, Clean Energy Council? Yeah, a few of you. It's an amazing program, and they're funding our interns. It's going to do great things.
I'm Frank Gordon. I'm a developer. I work in a lot of passive house. It's about to begin, I hope.
I am Paul. I am seeking one entry level. I've done some work on selling leads in my last firm, my last job. I don't want to be here. But I do it.
All right, welcome.
Hank Keating, I'm an architect with a development company. We built some, not passive house, but very close to passive house, multi-family affordable, and I'm building a passive house for myself.
I'm Christopher Haynes. I'm an architect, unencumbered with employment. Energy efficiency, commercial, industrial, sustainability, some academic work, and I'm here to learn more about passive house. I know something.
I'm Stephanie Horowitz. I'm an architect and passive house consultant with Zero Energy Design.
Brian Butler, general contractor and general hanger arounder of passive house people. My name is Sean Spalding, and career transition from consumer packaged goods, interested in building, design, the environment.
There's another interesting transition.
Yeah.
Small packaging to large packaging, basically.
Yeah.
Our name on.
I'm Paul Elderkamp. I'm a remodeling contract with one hat. With another hat, I work with Mike Duclos, helping project teams improve their game. So it's like performance. Are you ready to go, Rick?
I'm just grabbing a water. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Coming attractions next month in July. A couple months ago, we heard Steve talk about his own projects in glowing terms. So I thought, for fairness doctrine, next month we're actually going to have one of his clients come and talk about his project.
I guarantee his talk will be glowing.
It'll be Farley, who's both a builder and an owner and an occupant, basically. So that's going to be an interesting take. For the August session, we're interested in doing some blower door demonstrations, fun with blower doors. So we've got a couple possible projects, but if you have one that's accessible to public transportation, that you think might be a good demonstration project, and you'd like to get a bunch of expert and conflicting opinions on how best to blower door test it, let me know, and we'll make it happen.
And we accept both good and bad examples, and we can define what good or bad means. So it doesn't have to be high.
Oh, no, it doesn't. Yeah, that's a good point, Stephanie. We're looking for a project that will be an interesting blower door test. And that can be a leaky project as well as a tight one. You know, we might set up the fog machine, just to show how that works. If we've got mirror balls, everything. So
Come on over to my house.
What's that? Yeah, we get 2 Rick's house. Do you live on the T?
Stop right there. 1860s hasn't gone through it all. You put a blower door test with smoke in there, you'd have to call the fire department.
Yeah, in my experience, you don't have to call the fire department if the neighbors do. But anyway, with that, tonight we have a special treat. But it's living building challenge, and as you'll find, a living building challenge is to passive houses. Passive house is to code level construction a few years ago. It's a level of rigor that stretches credulity. And with that, I'll let you take it from there, Rick.
Thanks, and feel free to ask questions as we go along at any time. I think it is important to note that there are people out there like Plenty Fisk, and some of this stuff has been talked about for 40 or 50 years. And it is, materials use, some of this sort of on-site treatment, trying to figure out how buildings carry their own weight. So it's pretty, it's not unlike some of the solar and thermal issues that are coming back around. It's interesting to see it come back around sort of with a larger framework. And so it really was appealing for us to try to give it a go on one of these. And it was probably the wrong scale. It's a small project, and I'm glad it was small in the city limits. I will say it is very much a location-based process. The fact that we were trying to do this in an urban setting with, if we could have done this with septic and a well, it would have been easy, no problem. But trying to do it in an urban setting was quite a wild ride. So it is very location specific in what you're up against. And currently, I think we both agree it's still a beta effort. It's really a beautiful effort, but it is still beta, and there was just a lot of time spent trying to get answers that seemed like it was unnecessary time, and you felt like you were shooting an arrow out, and eventually something would come back. And we were trying to move fast, so it really was not conducive to that. So there really were some limitations. It really took an owner who was very committed. We'll go back into some of the general parts of the program. This is part of a compound. This is a 1,000 square foot building that's being used sort of as an educational movement. The owner is a environmental and social justice writer. So she's using this as sort of the base for some workshops she's doing, and it's really sort of a headquarters for her for stuff both very, very local throughout sort of Dorchester and Roxbury, as well as stuff that's somewhat international. She's very involved in the Meyer Power and some of these alternative energy and reuse projects in Central America. So she was very committed, and without it, wouldn't have happened. So there were almost as much, there was as much effort in the approval process and professional process as there was in the construction process. And so I think a different scale could probably absorb that quite a bit better. The sort of dance with this building is that there was a large, you won't fully appreciate it there's this set of large oaks that cover the entire property. And to really locate this one where we needed to, there was a lot of discussion about removing this large oak. You can see this really sort of comes in and hugs the building. And the decision was not to. We were going to mill it up, we were going to use it, we were going to open up, we were going to be able to get some sky. Even with removing that tree, we probably couldn't have met the solar requirement, but we'll get back around to that. So it's a small building. It's right on the top of the hill in Jamaica Plain on Chestnut Hill. I don't know if people are familiar with it. This is Chestnut Ave. This is the Stony Brook T-stop right here, and Boylston Street would be running right here. So it's a bony, high, somewhat forgotten site. As you can see, the house part of the project is here. The studio, old dojo, is here. This is somewhat abandoned property that's very ledgy, multiple owners, no real development possibility. So it's really sort of a pretty magical setting, quite honestly. It's used for these movement and yoga. It's used for these sort of writers' workshops. There's about to be a week-long warrior writers encampment, literally in the property, that's going to use this. I think I'm going to move pretty quickly to the process, but this tree was really what the whole story became around in working with it. If you look here, you can see this is these oak, so it's just massive, and you can see here's another one. There's these huge oaks all through the property. So this is this courtyard that's used by the main building as well as the dojo. Little entry area, the main work area, small amount of storage, sort of work area, kitchenette, bathroom, and the shed, as we call it, with all of the workings for how this is going to happen. Just a quick interior shot. There are three. So pretty quickly, sort of give an outline of the whole certification process. Full certification requires that you meet all of the pedals and you're net zero, and you have to operate it for a year to vet that you met your conditions in your model, and then they'll certify you. There are 7 pedals. You can be set what they call pedal certified. The site pedal is required for all of them. If you can get pedal certified as long as you do one of the other 3 main ones and do all of the others. And then full certification requires that you do all of them. Right now, there are 4 buildings that are fully certified. I think there's several that are pedal certified, and there's sort of a crop. We have filed. We're in our 1-year period, but they may reset the clock because of our toilet. And we'll get to that story too. So it's a long haul. It's a long haul. The site pedal is, it's interesting. Some of this has a real crunchy feel to it, but it's actually getting more and more sophisticated. I would say all of them exceed what you might find in the site imperatives for LEED, for people who are familiar with that. But there's really pretty strict limits to growth, how much you can, the fact that we were on a site that already had a building and had already been developed really helped, and how you fit it in. But there's calculations. I don't know if you want to chime in on some of this. I'm just going to keep plowing. You're going to have to chime in.
Yeah.
But you really had to we had to go through this whole, again, I think this was some of the beta part of it. They didn't know whether to treat us like a campus, treat us like an individual building, it took a while for them to determine what our site was and what our requirements were.
Who's they?
The Living Building Challenge, the people who are certifying.
Where are they out?
They are out of Portland. The Living Building Futures Institute. Oregon. Yeah. And it's a spin-off. It's originally a spin-off from the Cascadia chapter that kept sort of becoming more and more aggressive at pushing LEED further and further. And finally, they just said, we're going out on our own. It's about 6 years old, I believe. And really only became active probably 4 years ago.
So is this like LEED on steroids?
Exactly how I put it. Exactly how I put it.
But they're all natural steroids.
They're all, yeah.
No Redlist.
What is transect L4?
That's what we're categorized as through the Living Building Challenge. Like through it's basically a
determination of what our site is.
And based on our scale and our occupancy. That's what they call us.
Sorry, say it again. The what?
The Living Building Challenge. They have these allocations for your site, your size, and your occupancy type, and so that's what we are categorized as.
There's a whole matrix.
So when they talk, they were like, "Oh, that's an L4." That's how they refer to our project.
Oh, you got to approve this back when? You got to give us the permit.
That's all you. Getting revoke it.
As part of that, another part of this is you have to make a commitment to urban agriculture, again, determined by your transect, your site size. You have to basically offset both your construction as well as figure out, there's a formula for figuring out how much area has to be dedicated to food production, and you have to do that. So this is all a set of gardens that was established, and you can see this funny little line is what was finally determined as our work area. It, you know, in honesty, the site components of it were probably the easiest parts. You know, these are happy blocks. Again, we'll go through the Redlist. They were made right in Bolton, Mass, and out of the sand came from the North Shore, the lime came from New Hampshire, the whole routine. Part of our urban agriculture, we put in bee colonies. Now there's nut trees going on. There's a lot of annual crops going on. The water pedal, as I was saying, in the urban setting was just really onerous to get through. The fundamental principle is that you take care of all of your waste, you generate all of your water, and nothing leaves the site. The first law in the plumbing code is if you have a sewer connection to your site, you are required to attach to it. Period. You cannot go through Title V. You cannot use a septic system. So that was the beginning of a real rumble from there on. And we had the support of the city. Actually, Brian Sweat was active and helpful. The plumbing inspector was terrified, legitimately, about precedents being set. And the state was familiar with compost toilets and how they would be handled, but not in an urban setting and not with sewer available. They're usually used in more remote locations. So a little, brief digression anecdote. We thought we had it planned up. Again, we had a letter from Mayor Menino. We were pretty queued up. We'd made a whole plan. We showed up. The inspector was very respectful and professional, but he was really concerned about setting up the precedent. And plumbing variances, if you're denied, it's over. You can wait a year and reapply, but no sooner. And so we began to realize that this was a very conservative board, and this was not as obvious to them as it was to us. It was interesting that the chairman cast the decisive vote not to deny the variance and the deciding vote not to approve the variance. In essence, said, go back, meet with everybody, try again. So it was this little parliamentary quirk that allowed us to regroup and come back without having to wait a year.
Have you set a precedent
Yes. Well,
for us?
we have been given a variance from the plumbing board. It's not assured, it's a variance. There is a precedent. There is a precedent. The protocol that is evolving, because what it does is it pushes it out. As soon as you're not connected to the sewer, you are no longer under the plumbing code. You are now under the Department of Environmental Protection and under Title V. So some of the stuff is being inspected by the plumber. Some of it is being inspected by DEP, which in the city of Boston goes through public health and has a licensed scientist who observes all that, because there is a small section of septic out in the Grove, they call it, out in West Roxbury, sort of a frontier part of West Roxbury, that they still have active septic. So that, they administer Title V. The state required us to we could compost it, but we were going to have to truck the compost off site, and we were going to have to get rid of the black water. We were given the variance. Now we're into Title V, and they're beginning to actually reconsider whether we have to truck it off. And we're in the process of we're doing test pits and trying to figure out our way through. It's probably going to be a variety of systems. This was a temporary, until we got the permanent water systems in, this was the temporary for the water systems. Garrison's been so into this. I'm going to probably let you run. I don't know which image is better.
So
that's your pointer.
the initial
Right in the middle.
the initial intent was to take rain collected water, treat it, reuse it in the sinks within the building, recirculate it to recharge and for agriculture uses through a cistern. Um, through our variance process, they are not allowing us to take it off the roof and filter it. We need a potable water supply that is
To the sanitary sink.
for the toilet. We won't be able to use our own sanitized gray water or rainwater. This system breaks into the initial components of what we were trying to do. Pretty complex arrangement within this tiny space, and again, it's the scale. It's not fully occupied. It's there's a 1 bath, 2 sinks for hand washing. So our calculations were difficult to.
They were below any standard metric for what a septic system or anything else needed to process.
So.
So this sanitary sink is the only place where you need potable water on site?
Yes.
So otherwise it's a toilet and then landscape irrigation.
And people, we could have used chemical hand wash probably and eliminated it.
Sanitary sink outside the toilet room?
Yeah, it's in the toilet.
In the toilet.
That's this bridging between the plumbing code and because a compost toilet only requires that you have a hand sanitizer.
What's the classification on that building?
Classification?
Yeah, like assembly.
Accessory building.
Yeah. I think the key pieces that are that there are really 3 systems. There's your wastewater, your working water, whether it's potable or not, and your gray water. So the wastewater now will go from the toilet into these storage tanks. We probably have enough storage to sort of ride out our 2-year test period, and then we may just use it on site. If not, we can have it removed or mysteriously have it used to how most people use it and never get rid of it. The solid waste, again, currently is in discussion how it will be fully remediated. Some of it is going to go back into what has been approved as a gray water garden infiltration system, and that's what we're entering into this testing system for, which is not, is not that mysterious, but is also people are very skeptical in an urban environment. Again, if you had a well, this would have been easy. I think the larger urban buildings we're finding that now that we've gotten into it, most are sort of following the same path we are, which is a little bit of double plumbing, and that you could provide this water from within the building, but you're having to introduce enough potable water to keep the urban municipal inspectors content.
Any problem with 1 bathroom?
No. I mean, occupancy-wise, no.
Would it have been possible to do a well and test to see what you got for water quality, or is it just in a water district? They wouldn't allow it.
It's a really ledgy, difficult site. There's not great access. If it actually sort of felt like gaming the system a little bit, we want to do it with the building, and if they're going to make us to check the box, run a potable line in, we're doing that. So I think we're both us and the Living Building, the certification, the Living Building Futures Institute are clear. We have to have the infrastructure to be able to do it on site. No, we're putting it into a filtration garden. We're not allowed to use it for any use. That we basically are putting it into a low-scale septic system.
So you're putting it into a garden, but not a septic field.
We don't have the depth for a septic field because we've already done it, but we have almost enough. So everyone's trying to work it through because it's only gray water, but the definition is gray water is treated like black water, except for in some conditions you can define it clearly enough, you can put it into a rain garden. But
so if you hadn't had ledge conditions, would a septic field been a simple answer for everybody?
And that's what we were saying with the neighborhood scenario.
Well, no, after we had the variance, it would have been viable. Yeah. It would not have, without the plumbing variance, it would not have. there's a fair amount of filtration, both of particle and chemical and biological matter. That it has to go from here into a pressure tank, into a set of filters. Ultimately, is it fully potable? The estimates for what it would take to certify it as potable, we could have built another building. So it really is being used purely for workloads, and then we're meeting the requirement for the potable, the sanitary with a line. Yeah. Absolute on-site treatment. Yes. It's theoretically it's a fully sustainable system.
Right. So
If it's done properly, it's a fully sustainable system. It's not a holding tank. A septic system isn't a holding tank. It's designed as a treatment plant. I think some of the other urban plans buildings have done a living machine as part of it. But again, the water is gray water no matter what in the eyes of the code. It's again, we thought about the well and tried to see. I think we've just made a commitment to produce it with the building. This in the urban setting is by far the hardest pedal to wrangle with. It's really taken an incredible amount of effort. So the toilet went in this week. There's a man in a can. That's a Clivis rep. It's pretty incredible. This is an interesting one because they say net zero energy, and you think they're all in. There were definitely. This is the one we probably had the biggest fights about. You have to with them. Living building challenge, and we'll go into it. It is interesting to do a small building where every circuit is monitored. You really get to know everything about everything.
Every circuit.
I think what the energy piece, I think we've all in this room probably reached a point where envelope. You can drive the load down. Getting replacement air in a controlled way. The three basic passive house standards. Energy is pretty manageable at this point, and so it's not that hard. You roll in the Redlist and no components from the Redlist, and it becomes a whole different game. Every rigid foam has fire retardant in it. You can't use it. Period. Most of your building wraps have something in them, or the companies aren't willing to disclose what's in them. Either way, it doesn't matter. You can't use them. Plywood was probably we'll get back around, but focusing on energy, it was just like one wall after another. We finally caved and it's a small project. We got bootleg foam out of Branch River before they treated it with fire retardant, and we were using it outside the shell. So we
just sneak down there
no, they knew. They said it can't be used, in these conditions, and we said fine, and we drove off. So, but no PVC, which means you can't use Romex. So you're doing all your wiring in conduit, which means you've got thermal loops everywhere and this whole different set of connections which are a compromise and have a lot more embodied material. And there were just so many reasons why it was a bad idea. And that's sort of because you couldn't use anything on the red list. I think there was a long-term energy and carbon compromise to meet that requirement. So I think they're really clear on the red list, and they're willing to you're zero energy. You do that however you wish, but it cannot involve anything with it's a red list product, which is really endemic in the building products. It's really phenomenal. Fire retardant being the most insidious one. It's really hard to chase that out of them. building products.
Do you have battery storage?
No. So we'll get, the other, we didn't cut down all our trees.
It will not allow you to impact the site negatively as from here. So we weren't able to prune, or we were able to prune, but not cut down or remove any natural vegetation on
So
site.
this is process of scale jumping within your district. We found a host to house our solar system and made an arrangement that way. It was a solar system that wasn't going to happen until we pushed for it to happen and helped fund part of it and made infinite contractual arrangements and insurance company arrangements. Who owns it and what happens? So we had to displace our solar system to another building in the neighborhood and sort of handle it through the meters, how the energy is zeroing out. That, once we found a host, it was not that formidable because there wasn't solar access on the site. There's a full tree canopy. There's no, and again, this ledge really wasn't appropriate for any ground source or, really, we had to find a host for a solar to reach. No, it's urban, I mean, the kind of windmill and the kind of it wouldn't have worked. It would never have gotten approval for it. So it was really, but I'm all for collective, some form of district energy is always a good thing. But it was a, paper nightmare. But I think, the biggest beef I had again is because I come at this more from the energy perspective, was the difficulty and some of the compromises we felt we were doing in detailing in order to accommodate the materials requirements. It was really, there was some pain in there. The other piece on the energy, which to me is actually, it really has, I've known we need to get to an electric-based energy world in order to solve our problem. And I'm a believer in that. But I have a Vermont background and still heat my house with wood that I scavenged locally and felt great about it until this. And they are just very clear. There can be no combustion involved in this whatsoever, period, for any source of energy. Obviously, your utility companies, some portion of it is, but no, no gas lines to the property, no consumption, no combustion on site, period. And that's a real shift for me to have, I'm sort of more open to multiple types of fuel and some transition, but I actually think it's been pretty insightful to just say, now's the time, draw the line. We figure out how we produce our electricity cleanly, but if your envelope's tight enough, you can heat and cool and ventilate this with electricity pretty readily. It was an interesting process to do that. It looked like you had a question in there, or no? Paul. No, Paul.
No, I think it's a great trend.
I think it had to happen. I mean, I couldn't bring the scraps home as kindling.
Because it was
that was like, wow, we have to compost the scraps. The small pieces of wood, compost it. We found some of the larger pieces of wood. We found someone who's
size off-site.
What?
Cut it to size off-site.
No, you can't. It can't go to somewhere where it's going to go to combustion. I know. Don't see no evil here. No. But luckily, there was Diane in the office who would put up with none of that. And we did find. I'm digressing into the materials. We did find someone who would grind some of the stuff and turn it into road bedding, temporary mulch for large site construction, and then it would be composted.
What are they using for the power for grinding it?
Grinding it, we didn't know. There's a lot of processing stuff out there that is not fully, obviously most of the materials were processed with standard energy sources. They do. There is some exceptions in how we'll come to the solar panels were basically the only place where I think they've caved, and they extended the range at which you could procure them, and they do limit some of the manufacturers. You can't just buy any panel, but they have allowed the use of them. You do have. It falls into this complex mechanical period. It's like our ERV has some pieces in it that are not, but there's more than 10 components, and you can. It's the only place I saw them get sort of realistic.
And for some PV that they have, if you have a product that can be used in a living building challenge, you can become pre-approved for someone else who's seeking the.
This is new. No.
But PV they have certified PV units.
I would say, everything else is very regionally controlled, and that's one of the few that they opened up the loop because of, I think, the need. No one, there weren't enough panels being produced within a 200-mile radius of most sites to make it viable. It's a good conversation. They do accept it, and it really compared to like we ended up using a wire that I think was probably 3 molecules off PVC. All wire has to be coated by code. Period. So it all has coating, but it's not on the red list. I don't know. As I said, few molecules off that they felt was okay. But
this product that you've got here, is this a pain point or is this a good thing? What's the context around this?
Is this a what?
Is this a good product or is this a pain? Or why
no, it's a good one.
This is the one we've
vetted. It's not European because it's too far away.
Yeah. No, but what's it doing?
Oh, this is the meter that tracks all of our circuits in the energy. This is what we have to send them what everything used at the end of the year, and this is how we track it.
Not the whole building, each circuit breaker, individual circuit breaker.
That'll handle multiple circuits.
Yes.
So we have a 20 circuit breaker panel, and that has 40 CTs.
And you define what's on each circuit?
Yeah, each circuit breaker has a dedicated demand within the space, lights, outlets, whatever. It's dedicated.
$4,300 later.
Dedicated to that circuit breaker.
We know what every circuit's doing for the year, which is pretty interesting.
And it allows the clients to be able to manage it after.
You can see if the ERV is running the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
That sort of, it is verification, measurement and verification. The health pedal is pretty crunchy. Environment, relationship to the site. I don't mean to be too cynical. I'm not trying to come across that way. There's a huge social justice component to it, and this is part of it. Indoor air quality is part of it. We have a good little Zendor system running, and we have to do air quality testing for particulate and, not just carbon monoxide and humidity, particulate,
VOC.
full VOC, full testing, and then full testing again in a year.
And a permanent system.
What? Radon, hold.
So what's the talk a little bit more about the testing that you do. Are there specific contaminants you're testing for? Do they have a list?
Well, the VOC is the only real contaminant, and particulate CO2, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, radon, and so those are the only hard ones you're testing.
And they have threshold levels?
Yeah. But the particulate even, I don't know if people know David Berg. He has to run a machine to pull that off. It's an atypical test. To see that the air is clean, that the ERV is doing its job.
So there's a list of these air quality tests online, presumably, so I can check them out.
Yeah, and the standard, if you get further into it, the standard you have to meet.
Is that test ongoing, or is it just once a month? Or?
So we had initial tests, and then after the year, we'll have another 6 months is the second test. But we also have a permanent unit that will monitor daily use.
But no VOC, just humidity, carbon dioxide, and temperature. That's it. Yeah.
Who does the annual test? The company?
No, a consultant. David Berg, who's on the stairs there. He used to be with Air Acuity. Now he's with Life Energy. Life Energy. He's in Concord. He's an old art.
He's retired.
He's been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
One way or another. One way or another. Pretty interesting. His house is a science experiment for sure. You know, infiltration. What are we showing here?
Direct recharge.
Yeah,
Viability.
direct recharge. Materials pedal. This it is just so the Redlist. Are people familiar with this?
Different than the one issued through Lead as well.
Yeah, I mean the Pharos. People familiar with the website Pharos, Pharous, which is sort of probably the most active group tracking this stuff. They're the sort of harbingers of all thing Redlist. But you know, it's all your fire retardants are on there. PVC is in there. There's a huge, you know, it's just like a checklist for all your building products.
How many things are on the list right now?
I think there's 10.
These are the key things you can't do.
Your material
you
can't
use.
period. Well, it's not the material; it's the chemical. So you have to find that the manufacturer does not incorporate this material into their product, which is, you know, it's not an MDS sheet. It's way past that.
You have to figure out the CAS numbers for every percentage of component in each product.
It's
100%.
This
disclosure.
pedal is extremely onerous to me. Not for them. No, we had to go to a poly. Yeah, I can't even do it. If it has a vinyl in it,
It's more of a
it's more of a rubber is the coating we use.
I think there's over 500 Redlist chemicals.
It was, you know, at some point we all got totally paranoid about the buildings we're in because it was like everything we would normally use was like not loud.
Vinyl is the most hazardous man-made material there is.
Right.
Period.
But it's on roofs, plumbing, switches, wires. I mean, it's endemic.
Yeah.
And I mean, just that right there was like, ooh, okay, now what? So I, you know, and I think this is a wave. I think in particular with the fire retardants, this is, I don't know if it's the next urea, but it's going to rear its head. And even Massachusetts, I think, is now starting to back off the requirement of what amount of fire retardant and where. But so I think that's the beginning of everyone realizing, oops, we got to back down here a little bit. You know, sprinklers are probably doing more than these retardants, and you know they work. Part of the way they work is by sloughing off and becoming volatile again. I would say, along with not being able to burn the wood scraps, the Redlist was the most scary thing for me. It's a long conversation. You should go to the Ferris website. Environmental Building News, people track, this crowd probably reads that a fair amount. It's an ongoing dialogue there as well. You know, Roxel, some of these, you know, the right cellulose insulations don't have these chemicals. You know, you have to hunt, but I think people are beginning to find out that there is a market for alternatives, and I think it will help market transformation. So stay posted, but it's a hard one to work with if you're, you know. I think the other thing that was actually probably expensive and painful and part of the beta process was there was no database of any of this collectively within the LBC. So you didn't know how anyone else had ever solved it. So you felt like you were on your own inventing the wheel. And that's beginning to change, I think, but it really was an unnecessary. They should have just, whatever anyone submitted, put it online and made it accessible. You know, there was this whole blog world going around them of people trying to get this done. What are you doing? How's it working? Where are you? What's? And it was really a much more collegial way to get it done, but it really was problematic how little interactive and collaboration at that time. I think it's getting better that we felt from the Living Building Futures Institute.
Well, also just the projects that were certified when we started were West Coast projects, so we wouldn't you couldn't use their products because they have to also meet regionalism. So even if they're red list approved, we still had to vet them for how far they were traveling and where their raw materials were sourced from.
Yeah. So once you got through 11, you had to see if you got through 14.
When did you guys start the project?
Year ago, August maybe. Yeah. There was a little bit of design build. We were pushing. We were like, oh, it can, you know, it was like, can we put this in? No, 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 maybe yes, no, yes. And it would go in. I think there's a frame. There's pictures of the frame, right? There's a case study. We'll go through it. So
Just go.
yeah, I'll start moving a little
Just gonna
quicker.
go into red list.
The embodied carbon footprint, not too bad to calculate. Pretty standardized format.
ICE database?
Yeah. And some calculation by volumes, and you know that to me was not too, didn't feel that foreign. Responsible industry, you know, is how this stuff is produced. It goes back in, you know. So the responsible industry and appropriate sourcing combined with the red list meant that materials had to be vetted in 3 different ways, and manufacturers were never very enthusiastic about meeting all 3 criteria. I think everyone here probably applauds all of those. It makes Buy America look easy for anyone who's had to go through that. The conservation and reuse, obviously, you know, you really had to track where everything went that left site. You know, we any foam scraps had to go to save that stuff. You know, any paper went to save that stuff. We couldn't find a place to recycle some old glass that was part of the barn we'd taken down because we reused as much of the barn as we could. And so we broke it all up and mixed it in with some fill, you know, and buried it. I mean, we nothing could leave the site. We had to find some way to reuse or find a proper way to dispose of everything. It was pretty maniacal, I have to say. Is this about? Yeah, this is
6 hardest materials.
These were some of the harder materials. The roofing system does have some chemicals in it, but we're committed to a green roof, so that was the only thing that would be substantiated by the green roof people, so there was a compromise precedent for using that. This is the wiring system we ended up using for the small building. Pretty wacky. Is this the insulation or the doors and windows?
The doors and windows were some of the hardest things to.
Everything from salvage doors to really throw down fighting about.
Because they weren't complex electrical systems, the windows had to be broken down into their components. So gaskets, screws, everything had to be tracked where it was coming from. That's
We had to red list every component of the window.
Yes.
Major components based on weight for the red list. Not every screw and gasket for the red list, but everything we had to know where it was coming from and what components were.
So we got through the red list, and then you had to meet the regional.
Accurate door
Argon meet the red list?
The Canadian Windows AccuDoorwin, triple pane company we've had quite a bit of success with on a lot of projects. But yeah, that's okay. And it's recyclable, and
Is that Thermotech, Fibertech?
Thermotech is Fibertech. Inline is fiberglass. Fibertech.
And which company was this?
This was AccuDoorwin, one of the competitors. They're all from Winnipeg. Yeah, they're all. These are a little. They're not as good for large scale projects. They're not as good for like large replacement, deep energy retrofit of a commercial building. In the residential market, they're probably better hardware, and they're a nice unit. They're the nicest
I've heard
people.
complain about Fibertech, torquing and putting it in.
But just silly stuff like you can't use pressure treated lumber. So we had to find, you know, exterior lumber. This is the roof off of the old pool in Watertown. And we got through, so it's a
cedar decking.
Cedar from the planking that we found that reused from Longleaf. In Cambridge, but you know, it was like, you know, what are we going to do for exterior wood?
Exterior framing.
What?
Exterior framing.
There's very little.
What'd you do? The stairs.
The stairs are protected, and we did them out of KD.
Where the code would let you do that.
And one of for our actual girders and joists, because we use LVLs and TJs, but which I have Redlist chemicals, but we got them reclaimed from a movie set, so that reuse was an exception for
They are FSC.
LBC approval. They are FSC.
So we saw part of it, and the fact that they were completely reused, they let the red list go.
Which movie?
Grown Ups 2.
Local.
So the entire floor frame, roof frame, some of the other materials came from the stage set. It was trucked down, and we used it. Yeah, Boston Building Resources, the Reuse Center, pretty interesting. They were definitely our colleagues in trying to find some of this
That
stuff.
door as well.
If you found an old building and pulled all the wiring out of it, you could reuse it with the Romans.
No, they were with it on the engineered lumber. It's kind of moody. It's definitely moody. They were really adamant about the PVC. That seems to be a throwdown for them. No PVC. Didn't matter.
You have to still support.
We have cast and copper produced, just north of the border.
Everything we use, you have to have supporting documentation where it came from, what it was used for, and for the movie set stuff, we did have all that. It came from Starrett Lumber, where we got everything else originally. So.
Yeah, the siding's all from New Hampshire, the whole FSE certified. So I don't know if there's a better picture, just so you understand. The building is basically up on piers. What?
Yeah.
All right, so you'll get a better view of it. So the building's up on piers. Here we go. Some old doors that were from the house we used to make the formwork for the piers.
That's really cool.
This is our garden gnome. This thing seemed to make it through a lot of them. The little wheelbarrow. It may show up in some of the other pictures. It was not. It is on the red list. So this is our frame. This is all salvage.
There's your piers.
All the interior millwork is salvage.
That's the old barn that we tore down. We used a lot of the wood for that.
With the strand board for those trusses be acceptable if it wasn't salvaged?
No.
I think the glues and the
Engineered lumber would not have. It would have been a tough fight.
They were FSC, but they weren't FSC pure, which is a difference.
Is this about the waste?
Yeah, this is our separating and end of life. Where is it going?
Everything had to. Yeah, it was pretty entertaining.
And middle left is reusing materials, cutting them, denailing them, and reusing, having a stockpile for.
This came out of the
whatever
barn, the original barn too. We reused. There was a barn on this property as well.
But separating TJIs and LVLs from painted stained lumber, those have to be separated. It's not just wood.
So everything that was on the site as a pre-existing building had to be kept.
Or we had to track out what we did with it. A lot of it had lead, so we weren't going to reintroduce it. But so we used it for form work, and then that sort of.
After the form work.
We disposed of it in the best way we could because of the lead. It couldn't go out as wood. It had to go out as waste.
Do you have to provide confirmation of everything?
Everything.
Nothing just.
No
quantities, certification.
No trust. No. In triplicate.
Presentation fee to do this.
What? Some places.
Pay a fee. Who's paying the people to monitor you? Who's paying the people to track you?
No, we submit all our documentation to LBC and they approve.
They do that.
Who? No, on the waste side.
No, I'm talking about the agency.
Oh no, it's like lead. We pay a fee.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. It's not. It's actually. They probably are charging enough.
It sounds like they put a lot of time.
Yeah.
To follow it and get all the details. They have to put a lot of time.
They do it by audit, right? So they're not necessarily going to read everything that you send them. They audit your submission, right?
We got a preliminary audit back. They pretty clear they went through every word.
They would say, "This is what's missing. This is where you still need some everything."
It's pretty clear that I don't know how many are out there, but it was clear the staff was on the edge of being able to cover it.
We were talking 4 certified projects when we started.
4 certified projects. So.
But I think there's a lot of people throwing rocks at them, asking questions. You can tell that. There is an inquiry process to find. I mean, it's trying to be very formalized, but it takes time. So these again are this is the equity pedal, which is totally outside the scope of LEED and many other programs.
Do they define human scale? Do they define it?
Well, it's how you present your project, yes. And
What's human scale in their definition? I know you can't get into detail.
No, they leave it up to us as the designers to express
accept
what
it.
human scale
Scale
is.
it. Most
and
of
then we
this-
have to prove it in our design, and then they say, okay, yeah, or no.
You have a
So you
pretty
have to
long narrative.
You have to define what human scale.
Everything that we submit.
Same
is
thing.
with-
We sort of blew past it. Biophilia is a requirement, and your sort of relationship and design inspiration and working with nature. That's a 4-page narrative on how you incorporated the principles of biophilia into the design. All of this is sort of the same thing. You have to be able to provide educational rights. You have to be able to provide access to the community in some points. It has to be an accessible building. You have to, So there are these metrics. You have to, you basically have to offset your carbon consumption with I don't know, New England Forestry Foundation. We help to preserve a small section of forest to offset our carbon. There's a lot of paper tracking of what you're trying to, offset and match.
With human scale, conceptually, would it be possible to do, a building in Manhattan?
Yes, I mean
You could.
Yeah, they I think they support urban dense buildings. The Bullitt Center, people may have heard, is one that's trying to come in for a landing on this. That's a 9-story building.
Where is that?
That's in Seattle. That's the largest, most urban project that's trying to meet it. And so I think it's access to nature, visual contact to the outside world. Some of these are, similar to what the LEED program would do. You all have to have visual connection to the outside. You all have to have a reasonable place to work and do your task. So on ours, it was pretty loose. ADA compliant, the rights to nature. You have to be connected again, and no invasive plants. And we took out some invasive plants and had to replace them with regional.
With an inner city, would they have an urban agricultural requirement?
Yes.
They would.
Yes.
It would be like greenhouses on the roof.
Greenhouses on the roof, or you could do some of this scale jumping. If your site cannot support what you need within a certain area, you can do it off-site as long as it would not be happening unless you were operating. Which again is fine by me. It's more of a district approach to it.
Right.
And the more urban these become, the more that's required. We could not have met our energy production on site. We had to. So they don't want to. Ultimately, there's probably going to be some large urban building. I can't. It's got this giant hat of solar on the Bullitt Center that I'm still surprised it can meet its requirement. I think there are many projects that couldn't do it on site. You're going to have to do it in a more district way. All sorts of writings about what happens and how we do it. I'm trying to pick up beauty and spirit, inspiration and credit. There is a sort of structure. There are sort of benchmarks you have to hit within these. These were salvaged actually from the old barn. These were protection grates over the windows in the old barn that we reconfigured into railings. That's just a picture of someone playing in the old oak.
That's a client.
That's Deborah?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. People meeting.
Is that a folding door?
Yep.
Exterior door? Exterior door?
No, that is a
Nanowall.
nanowall which was not produced in Europe. It was produced in this country. And the parts were made. And now it's here. Yeah.
How are you happy with it?
Yeah. And a bunch of knuckleheads run it, and it seems okay.
Leave
It's
it
so-
open all the time.
It seems to, there's a lot of ways to not use it right, and it still seems to survive.
This window, multifold fighting window, become very popular. Marvin now makes them. Geldwin now makes them.
And there's some high-end people who make them. Architectural Upwing, Steve Kearns, who comes to our meetings, makes them. And Nanowall has that wood and aluminum and clad, all that kind of stuff.
We have a pretty big curtain that goes
very
over
popular
this.
in restaurants.
Right, we have a pretty heavy drape that goes over this now.
That's a substantial amount of it.
Yeah.
And the air infiltration is not very good.
This nanowall's not bad.
Is it?
This is sort of the better of the bunch.
Outwards.
Right. Oh, that's good.
What did I do there?
You're done.
I'm done?
Did you do a blow door on it?
We did not. We are not required to.
What is it?
There's no airtight.
The color?
No.
Powder.
That's another beef with the energy, you know. The sole verification is that you use what you produce.
That's what it is.
You know, it's common sense is you do everything you can to reduce your load.
But it's up to you. Totally.
We were so tested out, and our budget was so tested out.
And the
We had faith in what we did and moved on.
client
You
found
know,
this.
excuse me. The structure actually sits about 10 feet away on piers, and then we cantilever towards it. So there's no foundation near the tree.
And the barn that was there before was a slab on grade, and we removed that to promote drainage for water. That hadn't gotten forever.
The tree grew up on the barn. That's
Right,
good.
exactly.
That's good.
So we gave it more than what it had.
I think it's getting more water.
That's the fears.
We were pretty, it was a little hairy, you know, trying to dig these piers.
Very difficult.
But also the ledge.
Yeah, there was a lot of it hit ledge. I mean, the roots couldn't go. It was pretty easy to track where the roots were going to go because there's a lot of area near this that there's probably 6 inches of soil. So we were pinning to the ledge almost immediately.
And the client found this organization and wanted to use this organization as their venture.
Yes.
They found you and
Yes.
we'll give it a shot. Or did
Yes.
you know about it?
No, they knew about us. They knew.
Tonight, I never heard of it.
No, it's sort of, I think it's the next hardcore benchmark. I'm disappointed in the energy component. And I do feel we made carbon footprint compromises to meet other criteria.
When you say the energy component, you mean the embodied energy or you mean the operating energy?
That there should have been blower tests required. You know, they require several $1,000 air testing. But they don't require a blower door test.
So they don't do an infiltration. What is did they give you the R values? Or did they give you
No, I mean,
how do they tell you how much insulation you need?
they don't.
It's up to us.
You know, we're
As long as you zero out.
right. As long as you zero out, they
It's
don't
just
care.
zeroing out.
But we're of this tribe, and we knew what we were supposed to do. Wrapped it up tight.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Insulated the Jesus out.
Yeah, I saw the detail.
I mean, the fact is, if you want to hit net zero and if you want your ventilation system to work effectively enough to pass the air quality test, you probably want to do a blower door test anyways. No?
We just didn't. I won't even go into what the budget, what had the budget
So
happen.
speak to that though. If you were to do this building as an architecture office without any of the living building challenges, someone coming and saying, "Hey, I want this studio," versus your time involvement,
4 or 5 times spent
4 or 5 times.
on the living building challenge part, easily,
Easily.
and then there were
Just
sub
tracking that stuff.
sub consultants involved that we wouldn't have even needed.
This,
There was probably as much spent certifying a building as building.
Yeah, so all the energy you save, you really utilize them. Creative.
Yeah. Goldman Hartman did a living building challenge project for Smith College, and they're pretty sure that the year that they did it, they were one of the more significant donors to Smith College. But they didn't get a plaque. They didn't get their name on the wall.
If you were to describe the philosophy behind it, you could say, various building programs are to reduce greenhouse gases and to do so efficiently. What would you say is the philosophy behind this? What values are they trying to
I think it's the closest one to try to document regenerative design. That that the building is truly trying to use less than it consumes over the course of its life in every way. That the net result is more than what went into it. So I think on the social level, on the environmental level, and on the energy level, it really is. I don't know if I use the term regenerative design, meaning that it's beyond just zeroing stuff, that you're actually you're trying to get up beyond that. So, the idea that, I think there's some stuff that we've encapsulated, some stuff that probably could have been contaminants, and overall that, we're not pushing anything into the sewer system. It's just an extremely expensive way to treat water. And so I think that's the notion of it, the simple way of putting it is zero everything, but I think it's really looks where everything came, it's trying to regenerate it, how we do it, and that the materials are regional and responsibly created, and they're part of the local economy. That is as important as that they're not poisonous. So it's the broadest perspective I've seen, and being sort of an energy geek, it is painful in some compromises. But other than that, it was the most rigorous approach to how to dial the meter back we've been involved in.
So in the end, how is the program documenting that it's truly regenerative? Is there some big energy balance database?
There isn't a big database on anything yet from them. There's just not enough information either in the hopper with them, or certainly coming out from them. I think the material we have to submit pretty much documents, where everything came from and how it's made, what its relationship is, and what is and where it will go.
But is there a quantitative aspect to that?
On
sounds very
on our submittals, yes.
There's
we have to literally down to I can't take my little scraps off and use them for kindling.
We handed over every receipts to them.
Every receipt is then cross-tracked to all this verification of where it came from.
But is the data siloed, or is it available to any of us to go see?
Currently is not available, and that's, as I was saying earlier, for those of us in it, it was very frustrating because it was like, what the heck? What did someone else do? Just share it. Just post what they submitted.
Harmon had a similar, when we had that meeting, he had similar that everybody seems to be going down an independent path.
You were reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
Well, we started blogging with we started working with someone in North Carolina, and it was actually helpful both emotionally and
because they did
technically.
They're going through it simultaneously.
You put in 1,000 hours more than you would have put in. For example.
Times X.
For example.
We had a couple of interns just going.
The implications of energy consumption and all things involved in your time. This is extremely difficult to do.
It was insane.
Extremely time consuming, which is an extreme cost in terms of energy and everything else.
We were one of the biggest contributors.
There's a major conceit to this. I think it's fantastic because it's real. Lead, I think, is basically doing the same thing different way. This is real. It's very, very comprehensive. It's very, very real. But the amount of time it takes you to do is obscene.
Yes.
And in that sense, it's not real. In that sense,
it's not.
The more people get involved and do it, these
no,
spreadsheets are going to be
I think it's like the
available.
I think he will.
At this point, it's a very expensive beta.
I'm commiserating with you because I feel bad for you.
What?
I feel bad for you.
Well, it won't be so bad again.
No, I mean you lost time and money.
Oh, I know.
But that's okay.
There was some
good.
insightful information.
It's all good. And manufacturers will eventually figure out that hey, people don't want PVC. Okay, we can do a wire that doesn't have PVC. This will get them there. I mean, that's all good.
Yeah, there's a few manufacturers like Roxel they're baby,
they're coming in.
Here we go.
They're coming in now. Yeah, they're coming in.
This is the train we've been waiting for. So some of the manufacturers
they're finally coming back. You're right.
are clear on that.
No, they'll get there. I mean, it's very difficult to get manufacturers to change.
I think
But this will eventually help.
for the bullet center, Prosecco ended up changing that formula so they could be used on the bullet center. So they took a product that had
No, it's a good thing. It will help.
and
But-
shifted it.
Right, it's like the whole paint industry is shifting. You can't buy
Just
it.
from when we started the project
IBS.
to where we are now, dealing with manufacturers, you've seen a transformation,
No,
or
it's all
more
good.
things
It's all
being
good. It's just
disclosed
be realistic
and
about
available.
it, you know.
It was a wild ride. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it non-profit organization? How's it funded? How many
They have some
people
good
work
contributors.
there?
It's a nonprofit. They're in deeper than they would have thought. Everyone is like a little wowed at how long this road has been.
Could you even budget this?
We did an initial one and we did a regroup one, and we were pretty close to the regroup. We still have.
I'm not even going to ask about the construction.
Actual.
You know, it was a tiny. It was a
Material?
simple.
Yeah, no,
you
no,
know,
no, no.
it was the antics,
I
all of it.
understand.
There
And I
and
don't
the
want
carbon
you-
footprint of trying to
And I'm not
find
negative, but
these
very
things.
positive about what you did. It's fantastic. I think this is real, but it's so formidable.
Yes, but it's getting better.
Yeah.
How is your learning curve? Do you think you're gonna be able to apply this to either
Absolutely.
your regular construction or to another living challenge?
I think we can. I think the information is going to become more publicly available, and that will help a lot. I think whether the Living Building Futures Institute starts to release it, or whether this sort of collegial network starts to release everything. People are starting to really share their material lists now, at least for other people who are involved.
And in your the other aspects of your business, can you take this information and start to bring it into your other clients and start saying, well, we've got this whole bunch of information nobody else has, and
Well, for deep energy retrofits, I'm a spray foam fan. I love it, and I can't use it anymore. They've scared the heck out of me.
Just coming back.
So some aspects of it are going across the board in the office. Trying to think air sealing in a rubble stone foundation, hard old house. We haven't had to do that since doing this. But, if I question using spray foam for anything, I'd probably change the configuration of the envelope before I'd continue using spray foams without vetting them a lot more than we have. So I think there are parts of it that are influential. Larger picture. As I said, I think the conviction to shift from a combustion world is really big, and the acknowledgement that we're a lot more accountable for the material,
Redlist is a big deal.
the
too.
materials we're
Very big.
using than we
It's very
have
big.
any idea.
Very big.
There is a industrial complex running this material thing that, I used to call it the old 4x8 conspiracy. Everything came 4x8 and it was all that. But I think there's a little bit else, on the materials part, that it's going to take a while to have consumers push harder, or it's going to take some real clinical trials to find out that these retardants and things are showing up in our drinking water and showing up in our kids.
There's a fair bit of documentation on that already. A lot of sources on material.
Right, but I think, as I said, Plenty Fisk has sort of documented some of this for 40 years. But I think we're at the point where I think it's going to erupt. I think that I don't know how long, but I think in particular the fire retardants, people are going to really start to say, wait a minute, because it's showing up in drinking water in children.
My impression too is that a lot of manufacturers, if they take seriously the Redlist thing, they can look at their product and go, you know what, we can actually substitute something else there. They just haven't thought about it before. I think there's a fair amount of that going on where they can say, wait a minute, we can reformulate this and we can be okay on your list.
So working with the manufacturers, we give them the red list and go through it with them, and it's an Excel sheet, and they can go through their own MSDS sheets if they can't disclose all of their proprietary ingredients or whatever. And oftentimes it is that case where they don't need something. It's a coloration or a pigment or something, and that's what's preventing them from being used. So we did find that.
And to recount Mark's story on the Bullet Center, I remember 2001, 2000 early lead projects. You couldn't get a low VOC paint. Right. And suddenly Benjamin Moore said, we're in.
Yeah.
And, worked with us on a couple of larger projects. And, we'd say, we want this color. And they go, we can't get it without too much VOC, too much pigment. We can't do it. And like 4 weeks later, they call back and say, we got it. They were really clear that they were going to switch. And now you can't buy a high VOC paint, basically, in any brand. So that's 12 years. The market has completely transformed itself from understanding of it.
Spinning off that challenge and maybe fomenting the bitter
No, I don't. Not yet.
Living.
I'm sure the Germans will have plenty to say about it.
In all seriousness, is it leaving?
There are some international efforts on it. Right now, they're trying to meet purely U.S. standards.
The embodied energy component, is there, do they give you a budget or they just want you to track it and be aware of it?
You have to offset that by you have to establish it, vet it, and then as we said, we offset it by both energy and carbon, during construction and everything, by supporting this the conservation of some woodlands.
Oh, I see. So it's a carbon offset.
But also energy offset too. The embodied energy that went in was was factored into the carbon, and then we had to offset that with basically supporting a conservation effort.
This building, in order to meet it, had to support a conservation effort off-site of a forest.
Yes. Well, you have to find some means of offsetting your carbon.
So how does this get scaled up to a?
They'd have to buy a bigger piece of conservation land.
We
were, I forget how many. No, it's wood's pretty effective.
I think we were at trees.
I think we were under. It was a couple of acres. That was it.
How many?
Of 100-acre conservation.
A couple acres, but how many square feet is this building?
Right. No, 1,000 feet, but right. But we contributed to the conservation of 400 acres. We were a little tiny piece of conserving to them.
Do you know how much it cost?
Not right now. I did. It was pretty cheap. It was cheaper than it should have been. NEF, New England Forestry Foundation.
Yeah, I know them well.
Yeah. I forget the guy's name we worked with, but he's sort of got it set up. I can connect you if you wish.
I know.
Yeah. But it was pretty nominal. The reality is you establish what you need, and we tried to do it with Audubon in town or Sudbury River, and it was just too prohibitive to meet our requirement. The contribution would have needed to be too expensive. So it's actually in New Hampshire, and it's forest land, not just straight conservation land.
Could you go back to the water? So all of your water has to come from rain?
Yes. Or a well.
But you don't have a well.
We don't have a well. Bullet Center doesn't have a well. Most urban buildings don't have wells.
Okay, but your water load is really low.
It's pretty low here.
You're not just getting
with proper, it's not a lab building. Even in an office building, it's pretty low. 10 gallons per person per day. It's not.
What does the living town have a gallons per day allowed for residential?
It's
less than 110. No.
You have to set it up to meet your occupancy, and actually, most towns are 150 gallons per bedroom in a residential setting. Yeah. Yes, you have to meet that.
You have to meet that.
You have to meet whatever the regulatory obligation is.
That's huge.
Yeah. You could make a case for. I don't know of any single family homes going through it. I'm sure they would allow an exemption. You could negotiate something that's absurd. No, or you'd never be able to contain it. To store it, manage it. But the idea is that you generate your own.
I noticed there was an education component. would it be possible to arrange a site visit for a small group?
Yeah, let us finish the toilet so it's all running.
I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah, so we're a few weeks out. We can do that.
All right. So
and we may try to put it into the Nessie one in the fall.
yeah. So stay tuned.
It's pretty. It's pretty open.
We'll do your blower guard test.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's pretty open too. If people are in the Jamaica Plain area, it's not a lot of people come. There's open
schedule. And
Tuesday, Thursdays.
Wall, and you can see
Tuesdays and Thursdays, 8 to 9:30. There's open
morning practice. There's 20 people on site today.
There's a parkour class. It's all
want
good.
you two to get us.
No. All right, we'll be there.
We want a special.
Let's finish that part of it, and we'll be on the list.
What's the address?
14 Chestnut Place. If you can find that. Yeah.
Has there been any sort of our education aside, but have the occupants are they kind of aware that
There has to be on-site signage. There has to be an open house for the public, which we've had, and you have to have a web page.
what is the response from the owner? Have the people that are using the spaces that you has there been more interest in it, in what the label is?
Yeah, I think people are pretty fascinated. I think the toilet's really going to get a lot of people's attention. I don't mean to overplay it, but the water systems are really are pretty entertaining. So the education requirement is real and is ongoing. And it's also part of her mission, so she has no problem with it at all.
Did you have any part in actually getting the BAC to adopt this as part of its curriculum? Or did that just happen?
Indirectly, through some of their faculty.
It's work. They're asking lots of questions.
Well, Jim, drag Jim in.
All right, we're supposed to have cleared the room out by 8. So
Thank you, guys.
I think we have a tradition of going down to the bar on the corner. We didn't get a table reserved this time, but if a group wants to go down there, I'm sure we can overpower whoever's there. But I would, guys, this was absolutely fascinating. I really appreciate it.
And actually, I have to put one disclaimer in. They are very protective of their information, and you're supposed to be we have an ambassador in the office who's becoming a presenter. We actually couldn't show the official slides. They're
coming out with version 3.0, and they're not allowing anybody to present until all the ambassadors have been trained on how to present the material.
So their logos and stuff weren't here.
That's never happened.
What's our email?
So that was really great, and I really congratulate you for this tremendous. We designed the co-housing community about 20 years ago, where we went through.
With Oak Tree and all? Yeah.
No, I don't have it now. It's new here. It was before Oak Tree. It was the first one.
The first one, yeah.
But it was like at that time when you go to manufacturers, you ask about toxic materials.
Building materials. What's toxic about that?
So,
I think the next time it's going to be the tea. Don't you worry about it. It is, as I said, and Rocky Mountain Institute and Plenty Fisk is like a childhood part, and it's interesting to see it come back around. set?
Yes, I am. That was wonderful. Thanks so much.
Good to see you. Thank you for coming.
Some, but in business, whatever trees, you look up all the
Where's
she goes
Buster
walk, walk out,
Walk in, walk out, or walk in.
about sort of, she doesn't envy your farm, she's going all the way high tech route. She doesn't teach it. There is yoga out there. There's these workshops that are there. IE's
Looking good on mobile. Really low.
Okay. All right.
You need to be out, guys.
You guys announced, Fred said you're about to go.
Yes.